Hey, welcome back to another episode of One Man's Journey. This week, I've got Eddy Perez, the current CEO of EPM, a company that we work with on the regular. He's just a regular dude, he says, who was fortunate enough to be born into the greatest country in the world. Eddy, I think that the way you asked to be introduced there says a lot about you. You're kind of just that laid-back guy that everybody can connect with, and I truly appreciate who you've been for us at Greenlight and who you are for the mortgage industry. And today I kind of want to focus a little bit about your story. So I want to hear, how you got to where you're at, how it felt, like all of that good stuff. Say you're a fortunate guy. I'd love to hear all about it. So take it away and tell us your story.
Yeah, sure. No, look, it's what I consider the American gift. I got fortunate enough to be, as I say, the child of immigrants who taught me very, very well and constantly reinforced the privilege to be born in this country. Since what a lot of people don't understand from Cuban immigrants is that it went from fascism, as we could say, the Hitler model, to communism, more the Stalin model. So my parents never really grew up in an environment that could have a lot of noise like America has, but the opportunity is boundly and endless, even though, sure, we have our host of challenges. However, every society always are, because it's simple. Humans aren't perfect. So that means there's always going to be some imperfections and some challenges regardless. Humans are emotional. We're not robotic. So you have to understand the human condition that it comes to. So that's what I mean always by that. And yeah, it's just, that's a lot of my story, because it was a lot of, I would say, a lot more, nurture over nature, circumstances. I was also, I thought it was a huge privilege being born in Atlanta, unlike a lot of Cuban immigrant kids that were born in Miami, because in Miami, you're a majority. So the great thing my parents always taught me was get used to being the outsider, because you're a minority in a minority. And what I mean by that is, even the good amount of Latinos in Atlanta, there's just not a whole lot of Cubans, and everybody comes from a different background, especially Cubans, only because of, like I say, very few people in this world have ever experienced fascism and communism, and my parents did. So there's a lot of education and knowledge and wherewithal. And a lot of things they say, like, you better be fortunate, you better be grateful, you better show gratitude, always work on yourself. Those are things that a lot of them weren't allowed to do. So that's actually a huge privilege. How did I get to where I did? Nothing crazy, nothing sexy. My parents didn't become wealthy and fund me. I was a pretty good originator. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the camaraderie of people, and just over a 19-year period, started it with $1,000 and then built it up to the organization it is today. As I say, it was the effort of many that got it to this point. Did I have a vision? Sure. Did I believe that I could demonstrate leadership in a vision? Sure. But that was really more of a cumulative of listening to other people and their goals, and more importantly, the prices they weren't willing to pay. But I was always willing to pay it, because it's a lot. I always say this with a lot of grace. It's a lot easier in the sense for me to pay the price, because I feel like if I don't, to my grandmother, my family, 7 out of my 12 cousins that were born in Cuba, for the few of us that were privileged, and I mean privileged in the sense of being born here and with that knowledge and that basis, not privilege in the sense of silver spoon, because it sure wasn't that. I feel like it, for those that have passed, including my father, my uncle was my second father, that they would die in vain. Now, even somebody who was a role model to me in this industry and mentor, Dave Stevens, I feel like I have an obligation. I have a sacred oath, as I say, of responsibility to pay it forward. Because what you're really doing when you pay it forward is really highlighting those titans that made it possible for you, so the next generation gets it great. It's really not for the next generation, even though they are the keepers. So I'm doing it for the right reasons, but it's really to pay homage and honor, to keep their legacies alive, because that's who laid my road even better. So I feel like it's my obligation to leave it even better for them.
That's a pretty heavy burden to put on yourself. I mean, that's something that a lot of people, they don't have the shoulders to carry that. How do you manage that from day to day, of like knowing, and now it probably feels like it's not a lot, but how did you develop that concept, and is that something that's literally in the forefront every day, and is that your main driver?
One thing that, once again, that I've been very fortunate was that had some failures early in life that built a lot of resilience. Excuse me. I didn't know English when I got to grade school. In first grade and in kindergarten, you're a lot younger, Ryan. So they actually did stuff in kindergarten by your age. Back then we played all day. That was kindergarten. You screwed around. It was basically daycare. You took naps. But in
That's the way
first,
it should be.
it's what I talk about hate. Hate's something that grows over time, not when you're young, because we live in a society where we're supposed to not get along, and you're told this. But I had a white and black male who helped me learn English in first grade. They didn't know any better. Here it is, me, a little Cuban kid, not a whole lot of Latinos in the early 80s in Atlanta. And they had no problem taking me in and helping me and coming to my house and pouring into me. So that resilience, and also I wound up learning numbers. That's what I would essentially call my second language. I was very good at math. It was kind of fun, especially word problems. I'm not the math type engineer that likes the calculus. I like more of the mathematical word problems and solutions and the creativity of it. And then through those tough struggles, I was able to break my accent by fourth grade taking speech classes. So I think that those helped a lot in building that resilience. I was also fortunate that I was born with some athletic ability, especially speed, jumping, and certain things. So even though I had broken English, we all had PE back then, and we all had to run 2 days a week for 15 minutes, which I think was very good for our physical health. And it's a shame that they don't do that anymore. However, when they'd say go long and they'd throw the ball, I'd catch it and blow everybody out the door. So athleticism did naturally allow, okay, who cares if he has broken English? So that provided me a little bit of shade while I got stronger. And that was a great forefront. And I just always had family that really demonstrated the American gift, because I don't believe it's a dream. I think everybody is lost on that one. I believe it's a dream, as my father said, to the 7.3 billion people today that are not in this country. But if you're here, it's a gift. Like anything else at Christmas, what are you going to do with that gift? It's still about what are you going to do. I think a lot of people, unfortunately, that have challenges is because they don't take action. My philosophy is action over words. Talk is not only cheap, talk is detrimental. Because you can really talk yourself into some horrible places and horrible stories. So I keep it because I say that to give you the context that I literally do things one day at a time. The two most worthless days of the year are yesterday and tomorrow, unless yesterday taught you something you can get a little bit better at today. But you got to take action today. Whatever happened, happened. Sorry to tell people that. The ghost of leaders past. You should not project that onto other people. Other people out there are not like ghosts of leaders past that may have given you something. And it doesn't really matter what you want to do tomorrow if you're not attacking it today. It's just that simple. A great line that I heard a couple of years ago that really sums it up is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And that's really
that's such a huge thing. And the one day at a time thing, we can hear as many cliches, and really the money's in the cliches anyway. But the cliche of it's not what happens, it's how you respond to it, obviously, and that kind of stuff. And that's something that through my sobriety journey, I've been able to generate. Like every day's day zero is my concept as well. So, if you start at zero, you can only go up, right? And even if it goes down, you're going to bring it back up because it's zero, like it resets tomorrow. And so being able to utilize that mindset, I think, definitely leads to where you are now. How do you instill that into the people that work with you?
You got to show them. A lot of times people say you got to lead by example. Leading by example to me is kind of like fatherhood. And what I mean by that is Chris Rock, probably my favorite comedian of all time, Eddie Murphy a little bit too, because of showing when I was born. But he goes, man, I got friends that brag about being a good father. You're supposed to be. Nothing to brag about. You're supposed to lead by example, because nothing's worse than the ivory tower. I believe leadership's bottom up. Even you got to be in the darkness of the basement and try to hold the foundation up off your quads, not even your shoulders. So, it's just really sticking to that and going along with it, and just, really dialing that in.
How do you help other people breed their resiliency? Because obviously I think if I'm going through all of the podcast episodes I've ever recorded, and I could theme them all into one thing, it's I was resilient. And like you even said it earlier, like that that's where it comes in. So how do you help breed that in people? Because I know that, like, and especially in a leadership position myself, like that often happens where people get down and out and they go, oh, I've done that 10 times and it didn't work. And maybe if they try it the 11th, it works. How do you breed that resiliency to continue into your company concept?
Sure. Well, reflection is very powerful. So you brought up a great point. Just because you did it 10 times didn't mean you did it the most effective way. So you got to always be constantly looking in the mirror. I mean, I think one blessing that helped me in life was that I did play baseball for a long time, because the gods of baseball, the gods, fail 70%. The gods, 70% failure. If I went out there and said, hey, Ryan, you're going to need to fail 70%, and it's okay if you fail 75 today, but eventually you'll get to 70% failure, how do you feel? You would look at me like I'm smoking crack, but that really is life, because baseball really does define it. Because that didn't mean that you didn't hit the ball. That didn't mean that you didn't get on base. That just means that you didn't make a play, because life really is like baseball. It's you against 10, the 9 people in the field and the foul poles. And that's not a zero-sum game negative mindset. That's just understanding that the competition and whatever you're doing is supposed to try to get you out. It's their job. Don't take it personal. It's not personal. So you just got to understand that mistakes are not a bad thing. Repeating them, obviously there's something you need to unpack there. However, it's really about, just that little extra. You got to get better every day. And you can. Now, some days you get 5% better. Some days you go -1, but that's life. It's completely okay to do that.
Yeah, the baseball reference is such a huge one for me. I played for 20 years as well, actually 25 years. So completely understand that, and my last 5 years were in a men's league, so don't get too excited there. But that's where I was bringing that college gas and just like throwing it by people and throwing 80 pitches and 79 of them are fastballs and just having fun. But like that concept, and if you really think about it, like more people have walked on the moon than people that have only got out 6 times out of 10. Like that's the most insane thing, right? Like, and then you go up against guys like Mariano Rivera, and more people have walked on the moon than he gave up runs in the postseason, and you're just like, so now you're against the best. And so that competition piece there is such a crazy thing, and really like you end up competing against yourself, like you said, like just get better every day, get better every day.
And that's actually the gift. People try to say, I hate the word competitor. I mean, because the only competitor is yourself. Competition is a great thing. I want you to look at any great story that ever was evolved. We'll go with Michael Jordan. That's the easiest one. He doesn't go to the next level without the bad boys kicking his butt, and then him hiring Tim Grover, and then him wanting to go to the next level, and then really going to blowing the gasket off of it. It's one of those things that the competition is a great thing if you understand their role. Now, is there some competition that stays up at night thinking about you? Yeah, sure. It's not a bad thing. It's actually a gift. But it's really about refining yourself and who you want on your squad, who you want in the same boat rowing with you. I think those are all gifts. I really do. I don't think they're a bad thing, dude. I really don't. I think, unfortunately, a lot of people tell themselves it is. A lot of people want to use it. A line that I heard recently, that excuses are like thrills. They don't pay the bills. And I'm like, good point. That's a good point. I never heard that.
Right down that line, like, okay, that's your excuse, but what's your reason? And like, it makes you like reflect and go, okay, you're right. That's not the actual reason. You mentioned you were talking about, now I'm going to edit this out, so I'm going to restart it, but you were talking about the collaboration piece, Jordan. Oh, you said that failure is going to do what failure is going to do. So I'm going to start there. So we're going to go 3, 2, 1. So you mentioned the failure piece, that it's going to do what it's going to do. Like it's going to do exactly what you expect it to do. I think that there's strength in that, in your mindset for that. And do you recognize that you have that piece where you're like, okay, fear is going to do what fear is going to do. My competition is going to do what my competition is going to do. So you go into environments and you expect exactly what is going to happen. Mm-hmm. But what that does for me in my mind is it allows me to just take out the competitor completely, and then allows you to insert your own drive and your own abilities, because you know exactly what's happening on the other side. How do you utilize the ability to know what's going to happen from the other person in your day-to-day?
Well, you fall on your levels of preparation. I think one of the biggest misclaimers out there that you're born confident. You're not born confident or unconfident. It's the self-assurance that you built over time, and that only comes from preparation and the work that you're willing to do consistently. Discipline is just doing something over and over and over again. That's consistency. It's the same thing. So you fall down to your muscle memory, as they call it. It's no different than those people that say, "Oh, my intuition told me." Well, that's really below your awareness line. It's actually your subconscious talking to you because of your preparation. It still goes into what you pour and what you do that prepares you for those moments. So that's what I would say is it really goes down to your level of preparation. Once again, any great story, they were immense preparers, and not to the point that overanalyzation, because I do believe as a society, as I like to say, people overanalyze a ham and cheese sandwich. And what I mean by that is when I was a kid, I used to go get a ham and cheese sandwich, and they'd tell me the bread, ham, cheese, and what mustard. And then I remember, I don't know, about 20, 25 years ago, go order a ham and cheese sandwich now. You get literally like 52 questions. What type of bread? How do you want it? Do you want it cut? Do you want it sliced? Do you want this out of it? What type of cheese? Do you want that cheese? Hey, how do you want that? What type of mustard? It's like, oh my God. Like, simplicity is very powerful. It's not easy because simplicity requires consistency and not giving into the noise. So,
yeah, I saw a little clip of a video today of, and he's a coaching guy, one of these online coaches that sells coaching through a program, and he was blatantly saying like 100K month is not as difficult as you think it is, and he lays out the 5 steps, whatever, and everybody wants to go, well, what about this and what about this? Like you said. How do you streamline those options in the day-to-day? Because, really in the grand scheme of the world, 1.2 million is this big, right? And it sounds so crazy to so many people, but like, that's how big it is, right? And, even in the mortgage world, on an average loan in my area, that's 3 loans to get to 1.2 million in gross revenue there, or in loans closed volume. So How do you streamline these options to kind of how do you put the blinders on?
How do I put the blinders on?
Yeah, and focus on what you really want to.
Well, first of all, you got to know who you are. That's a big key. You got to spend a lot of time with yourself. Marcus Aurelius talks about it in Meditations, why you hear people always talk about, I can't wait till the weekend, and they're burned out. It's because they don't spend 1 to 2 hours every day with themselves. The safest place in this world is to work on yourself inside your own soul, because that's what you're doing. You're really feeding your soul. Because if you spend 2 hours working on yourself every day, I've done the math, 730 hours, say you're awake 17 hours, you wind up going on vacation with yourself for about almost 2 months when you give that much time. So what happens is you're naturally not burned out and you're uberly focused, because most people won't even put the time in. If you told somebody that, they tell you about, I can't, but then when you reverse engineer their time, they're wasting 10 hours a week on Netflix. Like, I didn't say that you don't have to be uncomfortable. A great book that I read called The Comfort Crisis talks about how, and it's funny, it's what motivated me to start doing cold showers after I read that last year. 100 years ago, there weren't warm showers. Now, if you told somebody like I did last year, I took a cold shower every day till the end of the year, it was like 9 months. People looked at me like I was clinically insane. And I'm like, dude, we are so soft these days. It's not even funny. And heck, I'm going to tell you this too. There's parts of people in the world right now that don't have warm showers. So that's just, America has gotten too comfortable on its success. And I think that that's what destroys it. It's kind of like we've always heard the circle of life. Those people that say, I saw the story, my grandfather, he goes, my grandfather walked 10 miles a day. My father walked 5 miles a day. I drive a Cadillac. My son drives a Mercedes. My grandson will drive a Lamborghini, and my great-grandson will walk 10 miles a day. It's that whole comfort, that, how do you say, tough times create strong people. Strong people create easier times. Easier times create, tough times, weak people, and then weak people create tough times. It's just that simple. It really is. I didn't say it's sexy. That's the problem. Is too many people want things to be sexy. However, I've been doing this for 22 years. at least 5 days a week, getting up by 5 a.m., working out, taking care of myself. And not to the level I do today, because I made the mistake when I was younger, saying I was younger, I could go at it half, because I did, because you're younger, you can. However, it's just really investing in yourself. That's how you do it, and you just stick to it, and it's very mundane and boring, and plenty of people will sit here and try to convince you out of it. Like, oh, you gave up this. That's just crazy. Like I gave up alcohol all of last year.
Yeah.
Alcohol's back this year, but just beer, what I really like. You hear that too in business. Like, oh, I heard this when I was younger. To get more successful in business, you got to play golf and like wine. Well, I don't like either of them. I can't stand either of them. And I know I just insulted half the world out there. And I'm not saying that it's terrible. It's just not for me. I've had just as much success and just fine without doing that.
Yeah, I think that speaks to your ability to know who you are and know what direction you're going in. And I think a lot of people also struggle with that because, especially in our industry, right? Like there's like 3 voices out there that are saying all different things. And so they pick one and they go, that's the route I want to go. And then they do it for a month and they see a little success, but not what they thought. And then they're like, okay, now I'm going to switch to the other one. And then, it's like that overcomplicated.
Like diets.
Yeah. You get something that works and you're like, oh yeah, it worked. Cool. What's the next frontier? And like you said, it's not sexy. It's that boring ass day to day, do the same thing every day. And it's okay. Like it's okay to be boring. Like, cause boring people are probably pretty rich. Like if we're looking that way, and the boring people
are rich mentally.
Right. And exactly. And they understand the other side too of, you don't have to have a lot of money to be rich. It's the fact that they're just rich in general.
50 Cent talked about that in his book. He says there's some people that are so rich and they live in a single apartment, and it's because of who they interact and what they get to do with their lives. And that's so true. So true. That's so true.
Yeah. And I think that another piece of that too is the judgment piece that comes from within on that is looking outward and going, well, how the heck is that person happy? And we look at like, oh, he could have done so much more. And it's okay that he didn't do more. If that's the path that he chose, then he's comfortable with that. Then let him be comfortable in that. Because it's, then you see the other side of it too. And they look at the people that have been super successful and they're like, he's doing too much, or like, it's just all of that. Like it's the
work-life balance, which is crap.
Yeah. It's all about the harmony piece, right? Is being able to harmonize the two instead of balancing.
It's funny. On the way up, they'll root for you, but then they try to tear you down, and it's just because of the work they're not willing to do. And I think some people out there just don't want to work. And what I mean by that is they don't want to put in the daily work. They think of it as too stressful. And sure, if I was trying to eat an elephant one day, it would be. But if you look at it over time, you just have to understand what you got to do. I mean, it's kind of like the movie and the book, the Count of Monte Cristo. He wanted to break out of his prison, so he just did a little bit every day, or even better yet, Shawshank Redemption, where he wanted to break out once again, which I think that was an offshoot of Count of Monte Cristo pretty much, where he would tear through the wall, but so it wasn't obvious, he would let it through the holes in his pants onto the field when he's walking so nobody would notice. He had a plan, and it took him 19 years to get through there, but he got out, he became free. So most of things in life that are ever accomplished, they really aren't sexy because they're not supposed to be. It's why during crisis, those that perform well, it's because they went down to the basics and just did exceptionally well. They didn't have to worry about the glitz, glam, the flash, the fam.
Yeah, and in the mortgage industry for sure, there's so much noise there, right? Like there's so many different opportunities of pay this guy, get leads, pay this person, have stuff coming in, all of that stuff. And, that's the testament is to be able to put the blinders on and just focus on that one thing and do that one thing really, really well.
Yeah.
With so you've mentioned a few books, and I know following you on social media, you do a lot of reading.
Yep.
What would be one book that you would say, you have to go out and read right now?
I always say this to everybody. The greatest book ever written was Man's Search for Meaning, at least in my opinion, by Viktor Frankl. Because his story of how he survived 4 concentration camps, I don't care how bad of a day you're having, I highly doubt anybody in America is having a Viktor Frankl day.
Yeah, I haven't read that one. That one's definitely going to have to be in my list for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, Viktor Frankl. I've seen quite a few quotes. There's some big impactful stuff that he's.
Yeah, he is definitely on the Mount Rushmore of life. I mean, I think when you talk about people that just have so much profound effects, over the last few hundred years, you're talking about Lincoln, Mandela, MLK, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Viktor Frankl. Those are, I mean, it's pretty monumental. Viktor Frankl says something that if you can put purpose to your struggle, you can get through anything. And he's absolutely correct.
Purpose to your struggle. I like that.
Yeah.
So what are you applying your purpose to moving forward? What's next for Eddy?
Same. I just want to make impacts. Like I say, I've been very fortunate. I also consider myself to be very fortunate to be in the greatest industry in this country. Now, are there a few things that are more noble? Sure. Being a doctor and being a military veteran is more noble. However, we get to serve them too. So I also know that what I love about this industry is it doesn't matter who your father is, doesn't matter what degree you had. It's all more like sports. And it's really about, they say blood, sweat, and skills. And it's really about what you're willing to pay the price on. So I think that also is a great beginning. It can also be a great trap like sports, because what happens is since the barometer entry is lower, some people can have some really, really success fast and kind of forget where they came from. And you're seeing that a lot now because we're entering a normal market. Nobody wants to talk about that, but this was a very normal market for a long time. 2007 to 2019 had the same amount of units that we're seeing now, a little bit more, a little bit less, but it's not, interest rates in the sixes. I lived through that. It's just fine. Now, if you make it the only end all be all, what do you expect? You're giving people PTSD. You're basically telling people out there that if they get an interest rate higher than that, that somehow you're screwing them over, the market's screwing them over, or they should feel like victims. And no wonder you're not accomplishing anything. Like, it is what it is. The market is not going to save you. You can only save yourself. So it's really just providing that platform for people. Because
I think a lot of that comes from the, like you said, the last couple of years of the barrier of entry and us having some crazy couple of years there. And really the only focus during that time frame was interest rate. And every marketing platform out there that they hear, that the public hears from is about interest rate, lending tree. It's all about interest rate. When banks compete, you win, all that crap, right? And what we lost in the market is the value piece. And it is really funny that you bring up, the 2019 now, because 2019, everybody was like, we got through margin compression and we're gonna get through it, and we're gonna see this upswing in business, and we're gonna be all great. And then, 21, 22, the crazy years happen. And now we're in the exact same market, in an average market, and people are like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna last. Like, survive till 25 is the new 24 motto. And it's interesting to me.
You're not wrong.
I'm
glad that they said that, even though they got chastised for it. The NBA said it. I'm glad that they said that, because a lot of people bought into the la land of what the Fed's going to do. I mean, just think about that. The Fed's going to come save us. Nobody's going to save you if it's yourself. Nobody. Because let's just go with I like to go with extremes because they paint great pictures. 74% of loans are at 4% or below. 74%. So where's this refi boom going to come with? Well, another 14 to 16%, I can't get the final numbers, have below 6. So where are these rate and terms going to come from? There's not that much business out there. And you got to also understand something. Most rate and term business went to the call center type environments. So, consumer direct. Outside of people who stayed on top of their book, but people that stay on top of their book, not that many originators do that. And they were always chasing the new purchases, which I get it. It's more of a relationship versus a transaction. However, consumer direct's been decimated. So where are the originators going to get that? So you're not going to see what people are thinking. You're just not. And I don't say that with negativity at all. That's just realism. I'm a big fan of realism, understanding the numbers, but more importantly, understanding the behavioral economics behind it. Now, the good news is they're going to keep building, because now builders, part of the shortage we're seeing now took 10 years to get there. But a lot of it is also because when rates shot up 2 years ago, they put a pause on building permits. And once they realized a year ago that, wait a second, you've got a massive amount of people turning 31 in that demand. I mean, Gen Y and Gen Z are 3 boomer classes in 2. And naturally, people will buy homes, will settle down, will have families, even if it's a little bit later. So wait a second. You have so high demand. You have so high equity. News just came out yesterday that now people are paying as much on interest payments on their debt than mortgage payments. So cash outs should jump up. That's what's natural. That's not a bad market. That's a very healthy market. It's just not a steroid market where the Fed was doing quantitative easing and putting down the interest rates. And you didn't have to be anything. You just had to be a number to collect them. It was just raining. So now you got to have more skills. And to your point, as you said, Ryan, add value. Well, guess what? Like fatherhood, you're supposed to be that way.
And ultimately, a lot of the opportunities that are coming now, with the direct to consumer is really other companies aren't really the bigger companies aren't really advertising, like you said, they're the call centers for the rate and terms. They're not really advertising for that cash out refinance opportunity. The ability, like I'm doing one right now that we're refinancing them from a conventional at 4.125 to an FHA at 5.5, and being able to save them over $700 a month and dropping their term to 22 years. So if they utilize that extra 700, they're going to just, like, it takes the whole thing backwards and they get to write it off.
Yeah, that's the other part is people forget the write-off benefit. So not only are you saving money, you just transferred, I don't know, we'll just say 50,000, 100,000 in debt and get to write it off. So you get to write off, they say interest, if they tell you the whole period is like, we'll just say 50. So say it's 100,000 in interest. So you get to write that off, over time period. Say your tax rate's we'll just say 30, which is low, but let's just say 30. That's 30,000 you put extra in your pocket plus 700 a month. So you're talking about 8,400. You said 22 years, 8,400. You're looking at about 180,000 saved plus another 30. You've literally done a net effect of $210,000. But what? You had to go up a little bit in interest rate.
Yeah, and it's just being able to show that value, and we struggle with those new LOs in the same way of teaching them that stuff. It's like it's not always about rate unless you make it about the rate.
If you make it about rate, it will be about rate.
Exactly. If they come to you and go, "Can you beat this interest rate?" and you say no, they walk. If you say no, but here's a better opportunity and we can form it a little bit differently and save you X thousands of dollars, then you win. And it's just that different structure model. And I think so many people are just clamoring and just getting a deal that's all they compete on is what's right in front of them, and not seeing the opportunities that are there. Really, it's just being open to it. And maybe it's just a lack of skill set too. But that's
the noise they listen to as well, sadly, because there are some pretty bright people in the industry, and I don't say this that know how to spin and manipulate. They're very good at it.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's, like we were talking about, there's the 3 people that you follow and you pick one because he sounded the best or she sounded the best, and you follow him along, and then you recognize like, oh, maybe I followed the wrong one. And then you switch, and then you're throwing yourself off anyway. Whereas if you just dive in, it may work. But yeah, that skill set piece is there. It's just the sales ability really, and being able to show value in a different way. So, well, Eddie, I appreciate your time today. I think we covered a lot of different topics and a lot of different ground. And I think
it was fun. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's good to have you on, and hopefully we can collaborate a little bit more in the future, and appreciate that.
Yeah, my pleasure. Anytime.